Mark out of Georgia calling back in. Your call got dropped earlier, so I'm going to move you to the top of the roster. Mark, are you with us?
Yes, I am.
Welcome. You're
Hello.
on with Seth and Forrest. What's on your mind?
Yeah, I like that previous call. I consider myself a part-time theist in a sense that when I'm in a situation of very high anxiety, I start believing in God and calling his name and asking for forgiveness for all the bad things I've done. But when I'm out of that state of high anxiety, then my default position is to see it as a completely illogical thing to believe in.
Right. Mark, let me ask you a question. Is that how belief works? Like if I am on the side of a cliff, if let's say I'm standing on a precipice and there's a big drop off, does my belief in gravity and the fact that I might die if I fall, and that keeps me safe in that moment. So but I believe that gravity will cause me to fall down to my death. But if I'm not near the cliff, can I just shut off my belief in gravity? Can I just decide that I don't believe? How are you able to decide what you do and do not believe? Don't you just believe it?
I decide what I believe when I'm in a state of, when I'm not in a state of high anxiety. I understand reason and reality pretty well.
So is it a heightened emotional state? I think what I'm trying to figure out is, are you talking yourself into it? Are you acting out? Are you acting as if you believe? Because I'm not necessarily convinced that you can that you can hypnotize yourself into authentic, sincere belief in a pinch, unless you're just going through some kind of coping shift that's out of your control, and that would be more of a question for a psychologist. But do you really believe and really not believe in those moments?
Yes, me being my previous experience, yes, I sincerely believed it because it was a very high anxiety situation. I told myself, even like minutes before that situation came up, I told myself that, this is illogical. You would never believe this. And all of a sudden I'm in a high anxiety situation and I believe it.
Well, let me ask you, and you don't have to give me too many details. What qualifies as a high anxiety situation that would flip the belief switch?
A high anxiety situation for me is a situation that's out of your control, that with all of your learning and reasoning and abilities, the situation has reached a point that there's nothing much you can do on your own to change it.
I mean, can you give me a specific example or a scenario? You can make one up if you want. I'm not trying to, pry into your private life, but what's something that would cause that in your world?
Yeah, let me set up a scenario for you. Let's say I'm in a plane with a bunch of skydivers and we all have parachutes on, and I'm the only one that doesn't know what a parachute is. So the door opens and some guy pushes everyone out, including me. And here I am falling to my death, not knowing what a parachute is. And I'm in a situation to where I think that there is no way out of it. So in that situation, I'm going to be calling out God's name and asking for forgiveness and asking him to accept me into his kingdom. But then I look to my left, I see this guy, one of the skydivers who knew what a parachute was. He reaches to his chest and pulls the cord and the parachute opens. And I'm going to do the same thing. Even though I'm in a state of high anxiety and think there's no way out, to me, there is no way out. And that forces me to the breaking point of accepting Jesus Christ as my Lord and Savior. Until I see a guy pull the cord on his waist, then I just do the same because I have a parachute on.
So you're looking right at it, like something threatening is happening. Is that more like hedging your bets, like just in case, or is it a moment of desperation? I think what I'm trying to get to is, how do you then become a believer? I mean, I get it. Somebody's in the foxhole and they're terrified and they start crying out, and there are evolutionary reasons for people to do much of these things. But I'm trying to get past, what do you feel and what do you know, right? And so if you didn't believe in a God and you thought, well, none of the evidence adds up, I don't buy any of it. When you're in the plane or on the ground before the ride, And then while you're falling, you panic and you're like, oh God, please save me. Please save me. God, please, I don't want to die. I understand that. But is your rational brain now literally saying there must be a God? Or are you just hedging your bets? Are you desperate?
I would say that, well, it's a high anxiety situation. So yeah, I would say I'm very desperate in that situation. It's for me, it's just something that happens. It's not, there's no point in me trying to fight not believing in God, because it's a situation that's rare and it's extreme. So me trying to fight it doesn't help me unless I know how to get out of it.
Maybe Forrest has a better phrasing of the question than I do. I don't know. You have thoughts, my friend?
I actually have a completely different, like, just way of thinking about this. And I don't know if I'd be useful at this moment. Because, like, my big thing is that, like, everything you're describing in this so far is a trauma response, is what it sounds like to me. And so, like, you've got, you were raised in this belief that this whole universe was specially designed with you in mind, and that there's this guy who really likes you, not enough to, like, meaningfully impact your life, but, like, maybe if you're, like, dying, might show up for a second and make sure you don't die so bad. And so you lean on this, despite the fact that normally in your day-to-day life, clear heads prevail, and you're getting by just fine. So this just sounds like a response guided by and based in religious trauma from when you were younger. That makes sense. The issue that I have with it is, like, which mind do you want to trust? Because I've struggled with anxiety before. And I kind of had to come to terms with the fact that when I am in the middle of a panic attack, I need to just assume that everything my brain tells me is a lie. And sure the fuck enough, when the panic attack ends, I feel great. And I can think clearly about the thing that was causing me to panic. And if I had done what my crazy brain told me to do, I would have been miserable and unhappy, and I would have made my life significantly worse, because that's what panic is leading you towards. And so, like, I think you need to just kind of identify this kind of Jekyll and Hyde situation you've got going on right now and decide which one of your minds do you want to trust. Do you want to trust the mind that tells you that there's some fucking magic guy out there that's going to protect you despite all logic and evidence? Or you want to trust the mind that guides you and makes you make healthy, sane, productive decisions 99% of the time in your life? I would trust that guy. And then take the time to think through it next time you feel like you're in that situation and you start praying and everything. Just wonder, like, okay, is this an effective use of my time right now? Because this doesn't help me 99% of the time. It's not actually helping me now. All it's doing is soothing me. And that's not actually getting me out of this situation. I just need to be focused on how to make this situation better. And I need to decide right now that no matter how scared I am and no matter how stressed I am going to think this through until I notice that I'm having a hard time thinking rationally. And then I'm going to find somebody who can help me, because I'm not going to allow this craziness to guide my life. That's what I would do. And I say that with a great amount of experience in doing exactly that.
Thoughts on that, Mark?
It's not, I don't think that's what I was directing. What I'm referring to are temporary situations that are high anxiety. My primary goal in using reasoning and logic is to figure out how to avoid those situations. And when I'm in those situations,
but when you're in that situation, and when you're in those situations, you should be using the same critical thinking and logic to try to ameliorate them and get out of them. But instead,
yes, that is correct.
You're allowing your lizard brain to take over and tell you that maybe there's a magic guy and that'll fix it for you. And that's wasting your time and stopping you from actually productively resolving the situation. And so I think you need to take that into consideration and find a way to, like, just remind yourself in that moment of that you are now using the crutch as a leg. Instead of leaning on it, you are actually replacing something where you were supplanting the crutch, and you need to stop using the crutch and decide, all right, this is not good enough for me. I'm going to do something better now. I'm going to think better now.
Okay, I don't see it as a crutch. If me as a reasonable person, I have to do the best of my knowledge when I'm not in that state to understand how to avoid that state. And when I'm in that state, if I don't have the tools to help me in that situation, then my response would be to do what it takes to lower my anxiety. So I can either lower my anxiety by knowing how to behave.
I feel like we're talking past each other.
I don't feel like
we're talking past each other.
I'm choosing not. I'm choosing to believe because things are stressful. Doesn't make sense to me.
To me, it makes sense because it's something that naturally happens in my underlying psychology. If that makes sense.
Okay. Well, you're saying it's an involuntary response. I think Forrest is correct. What you're seeing is a kind of reaction to trauma or threat. And so your emotional brain, right, the adrenaline kicks in and you become a less reasonable, less rational creature in those moments. And you're just admitting it out loud. Is that what I'm hearing?
No, I think we are confusing high anxiety versus unreasonable. Me having high anxiety may cloud my judgment, and I may need a mechanism to lower that anxiety so that I can think clearly. And some people use religion to do that. It's not that they can't make rational decisions, is that the barrier to responding to a situation is anxiety. You have to lower it first. And then once you lower it, then you can move with thought and diligence.
So you think the utility of lying yourself through, right? Because you're essentially deceiving. You're being dishonest.
Right, yeah, it
to
sounds
get through
weird,
it, to achieve a more centered emotional state, lowering anxiety so that then afterward you can be rational. Is that what I'm hearing?
That is correct.
Forrest, I'm sorry, you had something?
I'm just saying you just did the thing that we're both selling you as you're calling in to say you're changing your thinking when you're stressful. And then you're saying, yes, I know I'm changing my thinking when I'm stressful, but the thing is I'm changing my thinking when I'm stressful. And like, I don't get where the hang up here is. Both what Seth and I are trying to get across is that like, we understand you're doing that. You seem to understand that that's not a reasonable thing to do. So quit it. Like you're saying like, well, I have this response to bring down my anxiety level so that I can then think clearly. There are other ways to do that you can practice and that you can find ways to reaffirm better coping mechanisms than believing in a fairy tale or lying to yourself about something in order to get you through the stress to the point where you can then think clearly. And I don't think it's reasonable to say, well, I think clearly in order to avoid the stressful situation, but then when I'm in it, I can start thinking like, crazy shit. Like, no, just don't. When you're in the stressful situation, it is more important at that moment for you to be thinking as clearly and logically as possible. And so like in that situation, you need to try to abate the urge to then use this crutch is what I'm trying to say, to lean on fantastical, magical thinking in order to soothe yourself to the point where you can be rational again. It's not going to serve you any real purpose. It may calm you down, but it's not doing it in a healthy way.
Mark,
and it's certainly not going to help you.
Before I move on, what was the purpose of the call? Are you trying to convince us of the utility of having this coping response, this irrational response to get you out of an irrational state? I mean, what is the point of the call? Help us understand.
Yeah, the point is if people believe at least for me personally, I don't see myself as a believer, but when I'm in a high anxiety state, it's not that I want to leave in a guy. It just feels natural to me. It's just something I have to do to lower my anxiety. It's not like I'm planning it.
Okay. Well, I'm getting mixed signals here, and I'm going to go ahead and move on because I think we've sort of, I think we've gone about as far through this, but I'm hearing it happens automatically, and then I decide to do it. And I don't think those two are reconcilable. So I don't know what you're talking about. But at the end of the day, if it's true, it's true. And it's not, it's not. And Forrest is right. There are other ways that we can train ourselves to deal with high anxiety situations. There are all kinds of therapies that people need. And I really think the best way to approach our lives is to root our feet in the real world on solid ground. A happy fantasy, it might feel good in the short run, but I think the baggage that comes along with lying to ourselves is so much worse in the long term. I think, especially when we know that there are other scientifically developed and rooted on solid ground alternatives, there's no reason to embrace the happy fantasy in times of crisis. And that would be our encouragement for you. Is that fair, Mark?
I guess we have to agree to disagree.
We'll agree to disagree, but thanks for the call and be safe in Georgia, okay?
All right, thank you.
Still fundamentally,
See you later.
I still don't know what we disagreed about.
Did he? He says, I have to believe because I'm stressed out and I feel anxiety. But I'm like, well, that's not how belief works. And then I got the vibe that, well, no, I believe because then at that moment I find myself crying out instinctively because I have stress and I feel anxiety. Well, that's like an automated response, not a decision. And then he would go back and say, well, no, I have to believe because it helps me and I choose to do that. And I can't figure out how he approaches belief. So I figured after 15 minutes, maybe we had already,
it sounds an awful lot like it sounds like the kind of thinking that a pastor told him at one point or another. But like, well, when you're scared and your heart jumps out for God or reaches for God, that's what it is. That's the connection. That's the faith that you need to lean on. That's the truth of the religion. And I feel like those are the things where he's getting conflated between like, I just instinctively do this because I have a traumatic religious past versus I need to do this because it is what happened and that works. And it's like, I agree that it works. I also need you to understand that it's not safe or healthy for you. And so like, no one's arguing whether or not it's effective, but like meth's effective. If you need to keep up for a few days and need to get a lot of shit done, meth will do it for you. Don't do it though. It's a bad deal. You know what I mean? So like find a better, more healthy coping mechanism, a better way to do this shit. Rather than leaning on this ideology that like, if I'm stressed right now and I just think ludicrous shit for 5 minutes, then I'll be calm enough to deal with my life. It's just not productive. It's not good enough. I don't know.
He was talking about falling into the airplane. There's a film I just love. I can't defend it. It's just trash. But it's a Jason Statham movie called Crank. It is it's just a gory, shallow, violent 80s video game of a film. But there's a scene where he ends up like falling out of an airplane and he's got no chute. So he's falling obviously to his death. So he picks up his cell phone and calls his wife. That's what I would do. I know it. I know you cannot do this because you're falling at 110 miles an hour and the wind is great. But he literally is like, honey, sorry, I'm not going to make it home. He's like literally on his back with the wind blowing through his clothes. And honey, I'm sorry, I can't make it home. That's what I was thinking about with this scenario.
Thank you for watching that clip. If you enjoyed it, perhaps you should join us.
Join us.
Join us.
Join us.
Join us.
Join us.
At patreon.com/calltheline.